Hey, welcome back. This is part 2 of the Enhancement Talent for your Thursday. Eric Cornish along with Rob. And we always welcome your input and your questions. And we got just that after Monday's edition, so we appreciate that.
We had a list of our most underrated or underutilized wrestlers. Steve sent us an email. He wanted us to reverse it. And how about 5 guys who may have overstayed their welcome or weren't as good as they were made out to be? So we've been thinking about it, and I've come up with a few. Have you come up with a few?
Yeah, I have a few. I'll just start out with one that may not be as recognizable to a lot of folks, especially this generation. But I'm going to throw out a name here. Maybe you remember it. Baron von Raschke.
Yeah, you know, he's a guy that I know of, and I've seen matches of his, but always on DVD.
Yeah.
Don't have a whole lot of, I guess, a lot of memories of him or a lot of knowledge of him, but go ahead.
Let's just put it this way. When I started watching wrestling, and I remember as a kid, like 86 or 87, watching this guy wrestle for NWA, and he was old then. And in 1989, he gets hired by WWE to come in and manage the Powers of Pain, which lasted all of like 2 shows. But he was too old to wrestle, so they put him in their corner. Well, then after that, he goes back to the AWA and continues to wrestle as a top guy because he was Vern Gagne's buddy. He was way too old at that time. He was entertaining, but he was one of those guys, the first one that came to my mind that just wrestled way too long.
Okay. I have a few on my list. Mine may not be the most overrated or the most overexposed, but there's certainly a reason why they're on my list. And the first name I'm going to put on my list, like I said, these are no particular order, but one name that's worth talking about, I think, is Batista. Because when he was gone, I felt like people were refreshed. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody missed him. And that was proven when he returned to the most lackluster, grandiose return of all time. I mean, his return was very largely hyped, and it never ever delivered. And I don't think anybody missed him because he was so overexposed the first time.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good one. And I think along that same vein, how about somebody who has been under contract for quite a while now, made an impact coming in, but is just a sideshow, and that is the Great Khali.
That's a great name.
Well, I mean, you know, when the Great Khali first came in, it was interesting. Him feuding with The Undertaker, with Cena, you know, but after that's done, you know, their typical route is let's just make it a comedy act. They did it with Vladimir Kozlov. They've done it with so many people, just turn them into a comedy act when they're not a monster anymore. Well, that takes away the monster edge. You can never make them a monster again, unless you're Kane. Or Big Show. I guess they've both kind of gone that route. But Khali doesn't work, and I think everybody knows that Khali is just there as just like the freak that they can send out every now and then. I think he's done his time. He's proved his purpose. He's done.
While my next name hasn't exactly overstayed his welcome, he's been, in what I feel, a victim of overexposure. John Cena is a guy who's a great wrestler. He's a great leader in the locker room, and he is very dynamic and charismatic. People relate to him, but for some reason, every serious fan has a bad taste in the mouth for John Cena. The reason that is not because he's bad. It's not because he's untalented, because neither of those things are true. The only thing he's a victim of is being overexposed.
Absolutely.
And way too much time in your face, way too much time on screen, way too much time with the championship. I feel like when he's used the way he's used now in the middle of the card for one good segment, you know, in a strong feud, not over the title, he's perfect.
And what's funny about this is remember how much backlash there was against Triple H back in the mid-2000s?
Yes.
And how overexposed he was. Well, think about this. He goes away and comes back, and it doesn't matter. He's the most popular star. People didn't care that he won the title again. He came back with the DX thing, and people liked him. And it's you give somebody a break, let him come back, and that'll be the big thing. I was going to put Cena on the list. It seemed a little too obvious for me. So what I was going to say was Hogan. And really, Hogan has been overexposed several times, I think, in his career. You know, the late days of WCW being one of those after the NWO had run its course.
And also the very early days before NWO.
Well, yeah, true. And even TNA, being in the role he was in, he was way overexposed in TNA and just made nobody care anymore. And then, you know, he takes a little time off. He's back in WWE, and all of a sudden people are like, yay, Hogan's back, you know? But think about this. When you want to compare Cena and Hogan, Cena has already completely outstayed Hogan's first run in WWE.
Yeah, I
by
believe
a
that.
lot. And that's hard to believe considering how long Hogan was on top. Cena has outdone that by 2 or 3 years already.
Cena debuted in 2002, in the summer of 2002, so it's been a dozen years already.
Yeah, and Hogan, think about Hogan. What was it, 85 to 93?
Yeah,
So, I mean, he's outdone him by quite a few years, actually.
And like I said, he's not a bad wrestler. He's not a bad champion. He's not someone who should go away. He's just a victim of being overexposed.
Yeah.
I have one more name on my list, and this is another kind of interesting angle. Also a little obvious, but let me kind of tell you why he's on my list. The name is David Arquette. And David Arquette, a lot of fans will have fired up views about him because he had a very controversial run in WCW. This was a guy who was a fan of wrestling. He was teaming up to be a part of a movie with WCW. It was relevant at the time. But people just hate him because he was given the WCW title. That was not his fault, in my opinion. That was the fault of the people who made those decisions. And while he didn't overstay his welcome, he really wasn't there that long. He wasn't an example of a house guest who stayed too long. He was an example of a house guest who, kind of took over the household while he was there. When you say, hey, here's your bedroom, and he decides to take over the bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, and everything, Again, not Arquette's fault. I'm very pro Arquette, even though his run in WCW was a nightmare. He should never have been a champion.
What I will say is that the Arquette run with the title is just living proof of how WWE knows how to use celebrities as opposed to the old WCW knowing how to use celebrities.
Right.
Because WWE would have had no problem using David Arquette in a storyline. Would they have made him champion? No. Would they have made a celebrity champion? Under the right circumstances, but it wouldn't have been David Arquette. It would have been Shaquille O'Neal or Mike Tyson. It would have been one of those guys.
Someone who made more sense.
Or Vince McMahon himself, where it makes sense to be there instead of David Arquette.
So thank you for the email. That was a fun conversation. Please send more. The email addresses are right here at the bottom of the screen.
And we appreciate you joining us for the Enhancement Talent. Have a great weekend.